So the week began with a decision from a judge in Palm Beach granting the former president's request for a special master to go over the documents seized in the search on August 8th. It was lambasted, I think it's fair to say, from all corners, for including this corner, for its tendentious factual account and shoddy legal reasoning. Now the DOJ has filed a motion in that court for a partial stay to permit the use of certain documents, the classified documents, for criminal investigative purposes. Let's just start with the decision itself a minute or two, even though it seems receding into the distant past. Did you have any take on it? And, there are some people who have kind of groped for an explanation that has, sadly, to do with the fact that Trump appointed her. It seemed pretty threadbare for someone of her, credentials. And anybody read the opinion and have thoughts about it to share at this point?
I would just say my reaction is this: that before that opinion got handed down, I was on one of these email threads with a lot of very distinguished lawyers, very experienced, very sensible, impressive. I learned a ton from this and don't participate much because I'm not a lawyer, and it's very interesting to hear these people. And there was a lot of, the DOJ had a very good brief. I mean, there's no chances that she can go the other way. And she went to a good law school and clerked for someone and whatever. And, they, even though these Trumpy judges or the conservative judges on the bench now are problematic, I mean, there's no case. Who's ever heard of a special master in this case? And executive privilege is just out of the question. There's only one executive. Don't the conservatives believe in the unitary executive? And anyway, whatever tiny attorney-client issues there are, they're totally different from the executive privilege, blah, 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 blah. And the only thing I said was, I'm sure you're all right, but you know what? We're kind of in a new world here. And I do think it's a little bit still, 6 years in, too much complacency among sort of every part of this, every group, so to speak, that its own institutions, they're fine. And they, to be fair, the lawyers, the courts have held up better than almost anyone, any chunk of American political and institutional life. They certainly held up well in November, December 2020. And so there's a certain kind of reliance, as you lawyers like to say, on that, more suitable for the courts than certainly for Congress, let's say, which would be the other end of the spectrum, or the Republican Party, and the media is probably in between and so forth. But I think people are still a little too complacent that, if every intelligent former assistant U.S. attorney and former federal judge in the country thinks this is the obvious outcome, it's going to be the outcome.
The most surprising thing, in speaking to our sources about this, to them was the fact that this halted really the criminal investigation, and that has had ramifications on the intelligence community's review of these documents that were taken from Mar-a-Lago. Because as Bill said, the unitary executive theory, right? The intelligence community now is like, we can't continue our review of these documents to see what kind of damage has been done by Trump having them at Mar-a-Lago if the FBI and the Justice Department isn't allowed to simultaneously review the documents. It just really doesn't work. And so they actually notified, the DOJ notified the court yesterday in its appeal that that the intelligence community has halted its review. And so this is having real impacts on the intelligence community, and the potential impact on sources and methods, we don't even really know what they are yet.
Right. I mean, in terms of protecting the security of the country, that is absolutely the most important ramification. I mean, I think, Harry, your analysis throughout has been really strong about the legal weaknesses of this opinion. She kind of garbled executive privilege and attorney-client privilege. She didn't seem, as Natasha is saying, to understand the implications for the intelligence investigation if she was going to halt the criminal investigation. And I think the most important thing is that she acts as if the president is above the law. There's this hyper kind of solicitousness. Is that a word? Hyper solicitude?
Totally. Yeah, it's
for
right
a
here.
Former president.
I looked it up on Google. It's definitely in. Yeah.
And, there's maybe some interesting conversation to be had about whether a former president ever retains executive privilege over materials covered by the Presidential Records Act that clearly belong to the United States, not to him or her. But this scenario
But not these, right.
Exactly. It's so far away from that. And she has really shifted the whole framing, or at least tried to, away from the damage of these unsecured documents floating around Mar-a-Lago to this concern about former President Trump and his reputation and this idea of like some stigma attaching to him. And it just seems very divorced from the facts. And it seems like the Trump team went judge shopping and they fished their wish.